Hey there YouTube, how's it going? Nerdy Narwhal here, and I'm back again today for another 6-scale action figure review. Today we're going to be returning to my bread and butter, the thing that I love most, and that is a fully armored 6-scale knight. Today we're going to be doing one based on a character from the video game Dark Souls 3, and that is the Helio Studios Hollow Knight of Londor, or as you probably know him and as is stated on the display base, Sir Vilhelm. Now, full disclosure, I've watched all of the avidly videos on Dark Souls 3 and as well as some of the other videos out there to get an idea of the lore and just who this character was, his incredible voice acting, but I haven't actually played the game, so I'm not going to go into specifics of the character himself and how he presents in the game, as much as I'm going to just judge this figure based on the aesthetic and how awesome it is. I've played my Elden Ring, I've played my Sekiro and my Bloodborne, but I haven't dove in to the other Dark Souls games yet. It's on my to-do list. Anyways, without further ado, let's dive in and see what Helio Studios is bringing to the 6-scale table. And there we go. We're just going to come in close for aesthetic real quick here. Maybe if we can get a little bit better of a focus. All right. And the armor is intricate and beautiful. From the head to the feet, the display base that reads Sir Vilhelm. Everything looks awesome. It's this black with a little bit of gold running through it. Tons of details. Happy to say that this guy looks great on the shelf and has an excellent little display presence as well. All right, now before we hop into articulation, I do want to talk about one brief modification that I made, and this is temporary, but I am going to go in and do some tinkering with this figure. The only thing I did just for the sake of this review was actually stuff the hollow spaces of that smaller helmet with some cotton for now. This helmet fits over a very tiny 6-scale zombie head. It's all black plastic, nothing fancy. But the helmet doesn't fit tightly onto that head. So as you pick up the figure, the helmet would just sort of tingle to the side. It didn't fit too well. I shoved a whole bunch of cotton in there so that it's tight now against the head sculpt so that I can move the helmet freely with the figure. And later on, as we go into the aesthetics and the functionality of the figure, I'll talk about some other things that I sort of do plan on doing with this piece. All right, let's dive into articulation real quick. You just saw a little bit of what the head can do, but it is on a double ball joint at the top of the neck, as well as a jointed neck that connects into the torso. So you are going to be able to get a ton of articulation out of that head. It's going to look up all the way. It's going to look down a huge range. And this collar that they have for the character is just a soft, rubbery piece. So you don't have to worry about any brittle plastic getting in the way, or hard metal, or a piece of fabric that you're going to need to tinker with over and over again. That does its job of staying out of the way just fine for any sort of head movement that you will want to get to just find that absolutely perfect pose for your Sir Vilhelm. Now I'm going to bring it in a little bit closer so that we can get a good look at the arms. I'm not sure exactly what body they used for making this piece. The fellow that I bought it from said that they used a Ku model body. I'm not sure if that's true just because these proportions seem unlike anything that I've seen from Ku before. I could be wrong, but it feels in functionality close enough to the better Ku model bodies that they will use on their 6-scale armored figures. So the arms are going to go out about that far before that curved piece up here starts to hit against that shoulder. Now, if I move that to the side a little bit, I'm going to be able to get more articulation out of that arm, and I can T-pose it up all the way to there. Not really a big deal, but you will have to be fiddling with that armor to get your greatest range of motion. Coming around here, there is a double jointed bend in there, and let's see just how much bend we can get out of it. It goes up pretty good. You're gonna get maybe just over 90 degrees before all those armor pieces collide with one another and you are left unable to articulate those joints anymore. Without that armor, it certainly would articulate a bit more, but yeah, it's just not gonna happen. Not with that there. Let's straighten that back out. You have a pretty standard 6-scale wrist peg. However, when it tucks into this greave piece right there, you're really just going to get some swivel out of it. And that's all right with me. Now, another thing to keep in mind is this armor up here, the shoulder to the elbows to the wrists, that is all one piece interconnected by some bolts. This piece right there. There we go. So whenever you articulate one, it's going to articulate the other. All right, now I've removed his little shoulder piece just so we can get a look at what's going on with the torso. And perhaps to nobody's surprise, that is a fully armored torso. So you're not going to really get to use any of that ab crunch whatsoever. That's going to be entirely hindered by the torso. Any crunch up and down, you're going to get from the hips. And here's something that I like that they did a lot. These are all individually lobstered together with teeny tiny little bolts, but they're fine enough and durable enough. This feels exceptionally durable that I'm not worried about any breakage. And they just move up and out of the way plenty naturally to allow that leg, let's get it up there, to go out its full 90 degrees forward from the body. That's awesome. This back here, what binds this die-cast armor onto the figure, is also metal, so you don't have to worry about glue coming undone or any finicky leather or pleather straps. That is about as sturdy as you're ever going to get. And there we go. You're going to get about 90 degrees of bend out of that leg there, and coming down to the feet, they're on your standard 6 scale. There's not going to be a whole lot of pivot because of these metal pieces that push out to the side, but you're going to get a little bit, and you're going to be able to get some up and down aplenty. Now, the foot armor is also lobstered onto the figure, but unlike the Coup model Gothic Knight that I took a look at, that feels like it's on there in a far more sturdy way, not a finicky way, not a way that opens and shuts and is just bound to break eventually. That feels really good, and it rests naturally on the foot when the foot is on the ground. You even get a little bit of toe articulation. Huh, not used to that with my 6-scale figures. Put that back down, and it articulates for a fully armored 6-scale knight pretty gosh darn good. Let's see if I can't remove that display base and get Sir Vilhelm in a bit of a more dynamic stance there. It is tricky. That is heavy armor, particularly for the legs. The upper body seems to hold it just fine, but the legs, they want to get a little loopy-loosey. Not the end of the world, because my armored knights always stay on their stands. But there we go. He can hunch over. He can get a little something going on, looking up. Brawler kind of, looking like he's ready to go. It articulates pretty well for a fully armored 6-scale knight. All right, you guys, let's get into accessories. And this guy comes absolutely loaded from the bottom to the top with goodies, which I find really enjoyable. So first of all, as you saw that was just on the figure, he's going to have this little scarf shawl sort of a thing. I'm going to keep that on the figure most of the time. I think it looks pretty good. On the back here, he also has this little black cape that I just tied around the character. I'm not sure if he had that cape in the game or not. I don't really recall it, but I could have just gotten it confused for that little piece of fabric hanging down too, and maybe there's a cape there also. I trust these guys more so than just the pictures of Sir Vilhelm that I've seen and the videos of him that I've watched, because you can tell by all the accessories we get here that they really have a great love for the source material. First of all, you're going to get this little bell, and that is going to be able to hook into his waist. It's pretty heavy, so I'm probably not going to do that. Neat little piece though, and it makes a really satisfying little ringing sound when you ring that bell. It's just great. I hope you could hear that. But it looks good, as does everything that's come with this figure so far. Intricate details and pattern works going all throughout it. Let's set that down. Next, you're going to get this tiny little dagger, and that looks good enough. It looks a lot like the dagger that Jon Snow used in Game of Thrones. There we go. It's all die cast. It feels sturdy enough. No real, I mean, it will bend if you pull on it, but it doesn't feel like that shoddy metal that's used in some third-party knight figures. And it looks pretty good. There we go. I'm going to set that down. You are going to get this awesome sword. It is huge, and I really like their construction, because if this whole piece was die cast, I imagine that that would be pretty heavy. Just stylistically, it looks so much like the swords that FromSoft love to put in their games. I mean, this very easily looks like the precursor to, the Sacred Relic sword in Elden Ring, with that spiral pattern going up. I mean, you can tell they really love those patterns. But anyways, what they did, this whole base right here, and you see I've already done a little wrapping around it so that he can hold it better. The character does have a little bit of an issue gripping his weapons tightly, so a little bit of athletic tape right there helps it all out. Anyways, this is all die cast, and the top of the sword here is all plastic. So that helps with the weight distribution quite a bit. And as is a pretty important thing for me with these figures, I have no issue getting him to hold on to that sword also nice and tight with that wrap in there and pose with it. A little tight on the wrist, there we go. But you can move that around, you can get him to slash, you can get him to hit it forward, and he can support the weight of that sword really well, because they opted to only do a piece of it in die cast instead of that entire blade. The farther away from the joint that the weight goes, so if that were die cast all the way throughout the sword, the heavier that would be for the figure total to hold on to. So they made the right call, keeping that weight close to the joint of the action figure. Next, you are going to get a completely plastic sword, but one that is using the fire effect from the game. So it's a black flame that goes all the way through it, and it looks pretty nice here in 6 scale. But this whole thing is going to be lighter than that one, because that handle this time is completely plastic. And I think when you end up fighting him, it's lit up like this the whole time anyways. It's some sort of effect he has on the blade. So that looks really gosh darn cool. And I haven't honestly decided yet how it's going in the display, if I'm going to have this regular one up or if I'm going to do this fully ignited blade here. Either way, moving on to more stuff that you get. This I thought was really cool because they're trying to appeal to collectors of people that just want an awesome 6-scale Dark Souls figure and people that collect more regular 6-scale knights. But you're going to get an entire second helmet with a more realistic proportion to what a knight would be wearing. Dark Souls, they all have, in these FromSoft games, these teeny tiny little pinprick heads. And while I absolutely love the aesthetic and appreciate it as a part of just how their games are, they can look kind of funny on a shelf next to more realistic knights with realistic helmets. So you get another helmet that is significantly larger than that one, and that's going to proportionally help fill it out on a shelf if you just want a cool knight that's also not just limited to having that teeny tiny little Dark Souls head. This helmet is great. It's going to open up for you all the way there, and that seems to all work pretty good. And the head sculpt that you put in that helmet is right here. And this is a copper material, I believe. It looks pretty good. There's the rubber piece right there. And it doubles as a ring. So if you're not going to use that helmet, you can put that ring on your finger. Now, it's not really my style. I don't need a ring of a rotted out corpse on my finger, but it's cool that they even included that, because that's such just a little extra piece that they did not have to do, but it shows just how much they really appreciate the source material and were trying to appeal to their audience, which are people who mostly collect 6-scale knights and things like that. The company Helio, I believe this is their only 1/6 figure to date, and what they usually do is make 6-scale helmets that you could put onto your Coup Model Knights or your Pop Toys Knights, but this is their specialty right here, helmets. And I can tell, because it looks great, and they've done a really nice job on both of them. More accessories now. You get this gold coin right here. It has the face of that, oh, I'm totally spacing on her name, but you fight her in a boss fight. It's who Sir Vilhelm is sworn to. And on the back, real shiny. I don't know if you can make out what it says. Let's see if I get it any closer, if I get a focus a little bit. Helio Studios, essentially. Hollow Knight, blah, blah, blah. But that's a cool little collector's piece also that's just fun to have, right? I didn't need it. All I needed was a cool 6-scale action figure, but I'm glad I got it. You get this teeny tiny little book as well. The pages are all blank, but that's okay. I'll take a 6-scale book. That's pretty cool. Let's open this up. You get, oh, it's in there real tight, and it's going right back in there, so I don't necessarily want to rip it open. There we go. You get a 1/6 scale painting. There we go. Put that in front of him. So you have to go into the world of the painting. And that sounds like Dark Souls 3. You're either extinguishing flame or you're reigniting flame. There we go. You get 2 little pictures that you could put in the painting, whichever one you prefer, if that's something that you want to have in your displays. You get this Sir Vilhelm, Hollow Knight of Londor, Helio Studio Certificate of Authenticity. Now let's pull that out and see all the stuff you get with that. So they're all individually numbered, and that is a nice metal certificate seal right there. That's not a thin piece of paper. Mine is numbered 98 of 249. So there's not a whole lot of these in circulation. We'll talk about that later. On the back it says Sir Vilhelm, Hollow Knight of Londor. There we go. That looks excellent. And you're also just going to get some more pictures or paintings by the look of it. There we go. That's where you walk up those steps and you meet Sir Vilhelm for the first time. And another picture of it. Great. That is a fun thing to have. I almost wish, just with all the stuff we have here, that I could give this guy his own shelf for display and have all this stuff on there, but I'm not going to be able to do that. Anyways, you also get a great looking 6-scale gambeson, and now I'm not so sure if I'm supposed to go in there and take this armor completely apart and then put this gambeson on. It's kind of what I think I'm supposed to do because, well, there is room in that armor, I feel, for a gambeson, but I don't see it on the outside of the character at all. I imagine they included it for a reason, so I'm probably going to end up doing that, just slipping that underneath the figure. Probably not on camera because it seems like a big pain in the butt. You get, excuse me, this whole shiny gilded skirt piece that you can tie on around it. I'm really just fine with that little bit that you can see down there peeking through, but if I wanted it to be more accurate, I absolutely could tie that up and around it, and it's got some faux chainmail down there too. That looks really nice. And you also get this piece, which on the bag it just says substitutes. So I don't know if that's an alternative skirt piece that I can put on or what, but you get that too. More pieces, honestly, than I am ever going to end up using. You get extra bolts as well. And that, big deep breath, does it for all the accessories that come with this piece. It is absolutely loaded. All right, now let's just talk functionality in a little bit more detail, because I love having awesome fully armored knights on my shelf, but I don't always enjoy it when they're floppy or flimsy or otherwise don't feel very functional. I'm really pleased to say that almost for as much as a fully armored figure can, this piece also feels really functional. It's a solid first showing for a company that is not in the game of making 6-scale figures all the way yet. I hope they produce more because this is a great starting point, but I haven't seen them. I haven't seen much from them. I don't know. I didn't honestly see anything about this until it had already been released for months, so maybe they're just not advertising much. Maybe they're super exclusive, who knows, but they're making some great stuff, at least as evidenced by this, and I'd love to see where they can go from here. Now, you might have already noticed a couple of little things. So these wrist pieces right here are prone to wanting to slide away from the top of the hands. Now, permanent fix that I could do is glue them to the top of the hands that I wanted to use. He comes with a set of gripping and a set of relax, so not really missing anything there. I'm going to have one gripping and one relaxed hand pretty much for all time that I have it on display. That said, I don't know if I want to make that permanent adjustment to the figure and not ever be able to use the other hands. It's not as big an issue on this one. On the right gripping hand, you can more or less just slide that down taut onto the hand, and it's going to move around with that hand plenty well. It's more of an issue on the left, this gripping hand right here. Let's see if I can slide that. I can slide that on a little bit tighter too. So if you push it down onto the hand, you do eliminate that. Now the legs do feel, particularly at the hips, a little bit loose to have this figure on display without a stand. Now there's not a lot of friction on the feet, and I am doing this review on a glass table, so there's not a lot of friction all around, and that could be contributing to it. But I would perhaps like to see those legs be a little bit tighter to hold more poses. That said, I always display my stuff with the stand, so not really a big deal, I guess. You can get all the awesome poses you want. I am really glad that they opted to use a rubber material here obviously cloth would have been the best way to go in terms of giving everything that quality feel. But if I take the camera and go in a bit closer, there we go. You can see that there's patterns and all that going through there, which would have been really hard to get onto anything other than maybe a pleather. And I wouldn't have wanted pleather. So this rubber, it's going to function just fine. And it's going to not feel flimsy. This guy can hold a pose. You can pose many poses. And that is well and good and what I want out of a 6-scale figure. All right, now let's get to the kicker. Let's talk about price. Now, I couldn't find hardly any information on this figure at all. I was able to find one Facebook post, and the fellow was really nice in answering my questions all the way back from November. And he told me that this thing SRP'd for right around $350. Now, Helio Studios they're based out of China, I think. So obviously you wouldn't have paid dollars, but you would have paid Chinese yuan. But when I did the conversion for what he told me, it would have been right at around $350, give or take. Probably a little bit more with some shipping into the US. Now, that is roughly the same price that you're going to be paying to get anything from Coup Model or Pop Toys. In fact, it's going to be on the lower end of that price. I was just looking at the upcoming Coup Model Conquistador on Big Bad Toy Store, and that thing's going for a whopping $470. So by that metric, this is a bargain. But are you going to be able to find one? Well, it gets a little trickier there. Excuse me. Sorry about that, you guys. It gets a little trickier there. I lucked out and found this from a seller on Mercari. So if you stay hunting, I'm sure you'll be able to find one, but you will be needing to engage your hunting mode a little bit. The seller on Mercari met me at $360. I think that was a fair price for this figure. But everyone who has it listed on eBay wants extortionate prices. You're looking at $500 to $600. And now remember, this is a piece that I'm still going to be finicking with. I'm going to figure out how to get those wrists to stay more sturdy onto the hands, maybe use some rubber bands. I need to stuff this helmet still with a black cloth so that he doesn't have those white eyes, and so that the head still moves around. And while it is posable and well articulated and looks beautiful, it's not necessarily something that you're going to pick up and move around all the time. It's very much so a display piece before it is an action figure. And you can feel that not just in how it's built, but in how much it costs. This is much more expensive than the VTS Toys Raging Wolf Vargrim that we just got too. But it's going to look great next to him. So if you're a huge fan of Dark Souls, I can absolutely suggest that you go on the hunt and try to pick this guy up for probably around $400 or less. If you're going to get it for more than that, well, you're going to need to really be thirsty for some good 6-scale Dark Souls. And there's not a lot of those to choose from. I took a look years ago at the Knight of Lothric, and that third-party 6-scale figure was an absolute train wreck. I didn't really enjoy that piece too much. The construction all felt far too cheap for what you were getting. And the figure itself, I mean, it looked okay, but quality just was not there with the piece, to put it lightly. This is a huge upgrade from that. So if you're thirsty for 6-scale Dark Souls, you can definitely do worse than this. And honestly, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to do better than this. Otherwise, you're just going to need to be patient and hope that a company picks up the license or comes out with an absolute banger of a third-party figure. Out of all the ones that I've looked at so far, this one is definitely the best. Let's do some real quick comparisons. So here is Sir Vilhelm next to Solera of Astora. I looked at this guy on the channel not too long ago, and I really do like the figure. That is essentially a Coup model figure. It's their third-party outfit, so it's CM Toys. And it works great. It's functional, it's sturdy, it's a Dark Souls character. But you can see where they dropped the ball was in giving us those accurate proportions. Now, Sir Vilhelm, I believe it was Zuli the Witch who gave us a video showing that he was originally going to be a female, and then they got the awesome voice actor for him and decided let's make him a male. So he's even beyond on the side of skinny and not beefy with that tiny little head, but even Solaire had a much smaller head, and the way CM Toys got around it was just give us a big helmet that's going to fit over a standard 6-scale head. Definitely looks closer in proportions to this. But you can tell that an extra bit of love went into this figure from Helio Toys. Those proportions are awesome. They are so Dark Souls. Completely and truly. They're going to be on a shelf next to each other, but that's just hopefully going to help point out. I don't have the Knight Lothric anymore, to have those next to each other, but they got the proportions a little bit closer too, but the quality just wasn't there. Here I have a figure that looks really close to the character, and the quality is definitely there, minus maybe a couple of teeny tiny little things that I'm more than comfortable as a collector finicking with. All right, you guys, let's wrap this up. I wanted to do this review because the only other review on YouTube that I could find was in a completely different language. I think it might have been Chinese. And while they did a good enough job of showing off the pieces, I didn't understand a word of it. I thought maybe doing a review in English could help out some other people who were maybe on the fence. Or maybe you are like I was and you didn't even know this existed, and now you have to have it, but you need someone to vet for the quality of it. I'm happy with the quality. It's not the best piece that I have in 1/6 scale. It's not quite a Pop Toys, but it's a pretty standard Coup model. One of the better Coup models, actually. And I'm happy with that. Now, if there's anything that I missed in this review, or if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. I'll see what I can do to get those answered for you so that you can feel confident making this purchase or deciding not to make this purchase. Like I said, the amount that people are asking for it on eBay, shipped from China, is extortionate. I wouldn't spend that much on it. I would do some hunting. I'd be patient and wait. Like I said, I found this on Mercari for right around 350 bucks, which was SRP. I'm happy with that. Now, if you're going to spend more on it, that's fine. But please, ask me some questions if there's something I didn't answer about it. I'm going to finick with this figure a little bit more, do some finagling, maybe put that gambeson on and see how I like that underneath the armor, and just have fun with it before I put it on my display. It is totally capable of me having a little bit of fun with it. I don't feel like I'm going to break anything doing some finicking. And I do enjoy that side of this hobby. I do enjoy being able to spend an hour or two adjusting things and getting the figure to look just right for display. So I'm going to have a good time with this one. All right, guys, stay happy, stay healthy, and keep on collecting. Nerdy Narwhal out.